Hello, dear viewers. Welcome again to our format of the meaning of life. Resistance is futile, reconciliation with oneself and why it is so important, that is the topic of our conversation that I am having with a very interesting guest. Please stay tuned, because it is certainly important for you to reconcile with yourself. It will start soon. Today I would like to welcome again the guest Joshua Kohberg, a neuroscientist, and today it is about why it is important that we reconcile with ourselves. Welcome, dear Joshua.
Thank you.
We are always with ourselves, everywhere, and that's why, from my point of view, it's very important to be at peace with myself and that I am reconciled with myself. And how do you see the topic of reconciliation with yourself?
From my point of view, one of the most crucial points in life. You already said that from my background, the brain is always like the center of how I understand or look at the world. Not only, of course, the heart also has energy, the intestines and such, but our brain always shows us very exciting effects. And when I reject something, my brain's frequency changes. You can see with an EEG measurement which frequency bands are, so to speak, in the foreground. And if I'm in a deep situation of acceptance, for example, let's take a meditation where I have a feeling maybe to be one with everything, to feel a very deep unity, then I have an incredibly exciting, clean, relaxed band of frequencies in my brain. That means my brain is running in optimal condition. For example, if I reject something now, I'll take the extreme example of rejection. I'm afraid of something, then I reject the thought that what I fear overtakes. Then the frequency patterns of the brain change, and we now know when I'm mainly in such frequency patterns, biologically the lifetime shortens. These are hard facts that you can just leave as they are, but to which many people react. Because when I hear, my life is shorter because I'm shaped by fear, it kind of makes sense. And that's why the topic of reconciliation is so crucial, because I'm sitting right now with the most important person in my life in this chair. It's me. And when I feel a rejection towards myself, when I feel fear, and I don't want to say we're getting out of it completely. Everyone has their own peculiar behavior patterns. But the point is, if I'm 52% made up with myself instead of 30%, I've already made a huge leap. And that's the idea of why I say resisting myself is pretty futile.
Yes, it's not just about the fact that we, probably most of us, are just afraid of death. The greater fear is probably of illness. And it is probably greater, this fear of illness, because that's then a state in which everything else that otherwise constitutes life becomes difficult. Depending on what kind of disease it is. That means it will also lead to illness the more I refuse, right?
Exactly.
But I would still say basically that many live in resistance with themselves in this society. Has it actually increased in the past, or has it changed?
I'm always a number-oriented person.
Exactly, that's why I'm asking you. Now I have someone here who knows the numbers.
I would say yes, it has increased significantly. There are also a few effects it can be attributed to. One of the main effects, from my point of view, is the way we live. For example, in the last 12 years, there has been a large study by the Techniker and the DAK, these are German health insurance companies. There is a big study that shows that, for example, sleep problems in employed people have roughly doubled. We currently have a status quo that 80% of all working people have sleeping problems. And that's a high number. And sleep problems can directly be linked neuroscientifically to my brain activity. So I can say, yes, these problems are increasing. So these resistances. But the problem is that they are unconscious. I often don't even notice that I'm in a state of resistance. And that arises, for example, from my behavior with digital media. It basically comes from my behavior. There are a lot of topics there. Then, of course, fears that may come to us from outside. Now the last few years have been very fearful. Health issues that were there, some weird viruses. Then we now have an issue of fear rolling towards us, a worldwide recession, economic wars on a global scale. And in the end the question is actually always, how do I go about the perception of such resistance? And for me the decisive factor is, when I look, I have a perception of something out there. How can I really influence this? Can I really influence the course of inflation, for example? So I, as Joshua, sitting here now, what can I do? And if I can't influence it, then by implication I don't have to have any bad feelings about it, because I can't change it. Another issue would be, I have an acute lack of money and I don't work because I am a hardcore chiller. Then of course I could say, okay, I could change the situation by not chilling much anymore and maybe looking for a job, just stocking shelves in the supermarket, as an example. Then I would have the opportunity to set myself in motion, to use my body to stock shelves and to get money for it. It's in my hands. But everything that I don't have in my hands is actually pointless to go into resistance about it. When I rebel against my government, against things I can't change, I'm actually not doing myself any favors.
Yes, it's about self-rejection now. And the question, which I actually already answered myself in the meantime, that must have increased in the meantime, just because of the social media we deal with, everyone, whether they know me or not, maybe judges me. The viewers out there, that's quite normal, form their opinions about us. And the question is probably, how do we ultimately make this our own? From your point of view, what possibilities are there to get out of this self-rejection or to reach reconciliation?
The silver bullet, one has to say, the best way would be to come into in a form of value freedom. It's easier said than done, of course, it's always like that. I always have such a nice saying, I always like to say, to handle something comes from hand and not from mouth, because otherwise it would be called bad-mouthing. And like you just said, social media is so full of people bad-mouthing everything, everyone, but not taking action. And in fact, this self-acceptance is the very first and most important step, so that I can stop bad-mouthing. I handle what concerns me as a person. And when I'm at peace with myself, that is, when I accept myself, when I give up resistance to myself, then I can just leave every other state out there as it is. That's incredibly exciting. And what is also interesting is that many people know the effect. I am stressed and drive to an appointment. What do I have? Lots of blockages. People who drive slowly on the left. However, if I drive to the appointment completely stress-free because I planned a half-hour buffer, then suddenly the blockages aren't there at all. And that's the effect I'd like to show on the show today, that I should be value-free toward myself. And you can take me as an example. I am a person who is overweight, who now breaks the convention. For many reasons. I don't want to get into that now, why I'm overweight. I have been for many years. There are ups and downs. And there are always people who somehow, because of this, especially when we are not in direct contact but on social media, I have some lecture, is there a photo of me? And then they say, he is neuroscientist who talks about people, the behavior, why is he fat? And the point is, if I'm at peace with myself, then it's totally fine. So yeah, I am fat. It is true. The only question is, what is it doing to me? Or that I'm tall, I'm short, I'm poor, I'm rich. In fact, it's always just a question of your own perception. And when I have clarified it cleanly for myself, then I have far fewer resonances outside that make me resist. And suddenly my life runs smoother. And that's just beautiful.
Yes, maybe we'll just build a short bridge for the audience. So why do I finally moan when I'm in society? So when I see others, or why do I make a comment at all? Because something triggers me there, in the behavior of the other. That's probably the cause of it all. And then I moan because I'm not happy with myself.
It really is such a topic. You can even inflate it culturally. You can say, for example, I am German by birth, but see myself more as a citizen of the world. But a German, for example, in their cultural anchoring has more of a topic of envy. That means I have such a need to buy a car that's bigger than my neighbor's so that I can put something on top of that. That's cultural behavior. It doesn't affect every German, but it's such an issue. And when we look at such topics, we suddenly realize how much energy they cost. Where energy also flows away. And in my opinion, complaining is one of the topics that consumes an incredible amount of energy. Because I'm just reflecting on something that actually teases me, then I get upset with the other person. I always have a nice enemy image. Now we have a Russian who is bad, an Indian who is bad, an American who is bad, a German who is bad. If we all took a look at ourselves, we would realize, hey, we kind of have one planet here and we may only have one universe. So it's exciting. And all philosophies strive for a unity consciousness. We are all one. And that starts with me.
Like when our grandmothers said to me that if everyone swept in front of their own door, then it would be clean everywhere. So I'm assuming now, or I actually know that our viewers are already, let's say, oriented differently and have a good understanding of it and are certainly already oriented in this direction. But what do you think you can do on a daily basis, for example, in order to be better or faster at reconciliation with yourself? Do you have any idea?
Exactly, absolutely.
Definitely, a lot.
Absolutely, exactly. One of the most important points is really to see where I feel resistance. I'll give you a very crass example. I wake up in the morning and I can't get out of bed because I'm not excited about the day that awaits me, but I lie in bed and think to myself, this job again. And if I have a feeling like this, a resistance to something, then I should look at it and become aware of it. And for me, a very exciting point was realizing, for example, when I have a resistance, then it manifests in the body. One of the nastiest types of resistance is a cancer cell, for example. But it can also be simple. I hit my foot and have a big bruise. Then I kind of have a resistance because there is congestion in that area. And with such a bruise you can understand that nicely. So that means something isn't really flowing here. And if I have obstacles in my life now, for example the job or my partner or whatever is a problem for me, then I can see a bruise in front of me. And then I know I should take a closer look and maybe don't bump into the spot every day because the bruise isn't getting better or the congestion does not get better. But we often do that because we don't have such a clear picture. We then always go back to work, for example, and say, well, it is better than in another job that would fulfill me with a lower starting salary. And we evaluate things and say that the bank balance is more important than joy. Only when I understand that if I'm enjoying myself, the account balance automatically gets better. It might take a year or 2 or 5, but then the bruise will be gone and my environment sorts itself out, my account balance sorts itself out too. And I'm in a flow, the flow of life, you could say. That's why the straight answer to the question, what can I do, would simply be to perceive resistance. Where am I in resistance?
It's not easy for many at first, but it's about mindfulness. And unfortunately we are either mostly in the past or already in the future and are thinking about things like you say. The job in which I earn less money, who says that? That's the other question. Another question came up. How do you deal with it when you get feedback about you? You say you are overweight. If you get comments about it, do you react to it?
I am a master of ignorance. After all, there's a lovely saying that says what I say is mine, what you say is yours. And of course it's not easy, especially when you're being attacked or something. It's difficult to deal with such issues. So if anyone has a problem with statements like this, I would simply withdraw from social media. For example, I'm not there myself. I have the great advantage that I have an employee who does everything for me, so that I am present there after all. But I'm actually not interested in such topics at all, because I think it's a waste of my life. But basically it's like that. If I say I feel a resistance, then I would react to it. If someone specifically attacks me, and I have an example, I'm just naturally quite strong in communication, but I once had a presentation and a lady got upset, that was before the gender topic, that I only used the male form on all my slides. And there were 250 people in the room, and she asked me why I only have the male form there. And then unfortunately I answered her before I thought it through properly and said, because today is my misogynistic day. And the result of that was, because normally I wouldn't do that, put someone down like that, that's actually a big topic, but I just blurted it out because I actually found it funny that I thought I had to do this now. Also stupid, I found her announcement stupid, so my answer was stupid. And at the end during the break, so the whole audience in there had a good laugh, that came across as funny. But she then came to me and said that this comment had moved something in her, she went on the attack, because she didn't feel noticed. And that's an exciting topic, but I was still able to help her a bit with my stupid, flippant answer. Actually, everything is always a reflection, that's the experience I have. Even if I think about it consciously today, I wouldn't answer like that, but it just slipped out, and also had an effect.
Exactly, probably has to do with your bass tone.
Yes, exactly, I often speak faster than I think.
We're on the subject now, we've already dealt with that in another interview, but that is certainly also exciting in this context. In order to ultimately derive a strategy, how do I go through the personality or how do I deal with something like this best? My credo is always, treat other people the way you would like to be treated, first and foremost. I definitely think if we all took that to heart then we would get along very well in this society.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But it's just not like that. And just like you say, sometimes you're quicker with what you say than what you mean, but I don't want to leave the arc of suspense open for the viewers with the bass tone. May I ask you about it, about the bass tone? What is it and what can the viewers who have not yet seen the interview imagine what it is specifically about?
Absolutely. We can outline that very briefly. Every human has a personality structure, we all know that. And this structure is reflected in our voice. And the fascinating thing is that with my voice I can open a mirror backwards, so to speak, in which I can recognize myself. There I also see my upsets, but there I also see my strengths, my weaknesses, just my whole character is represented in the voice. The whole thing is called WUS, so a WUS analysis. When I do such an analysis, I simply have a huge advantage to also recognize the resistance in me, because I can see upsets. But what is now even more interesting, from the moment that your bass tone is determined you can do a 10-minute exercise every day that's easy. You sound, that is non-verbal, it's not coaching in the classic sense, but I sound 21 times in a specific methodology. And you said earlier that we live in the future and in the past. Now I have to hammer out a few numbers again, but this science thing still lingers on me. There is a very exciting study in which people have left reviews 20 years in the future and another group had to remember what happened 20 years in the past. For example, at weddings, if they could remember what dress someone was wearing and such. And when assessing the future, they just asked, what do you think? What will technical devices look like in 20 years? And so on. And something incredibly exciting came out of this study. That means we remember, so our brain just puts the pieces of the puzzle together. We remember the past, but we can neuroscientifically say we also remember in the future. That is, I remember what I believe will be in the future because that corresponds to my perception. And now comes the hard announcement, we have a hit rate of about 10% of memories of the past and 10% hit rate of memories of the future. And the implication of this is that our life is just happening now. Because here is the only moment in which I can also act. I can't change anything in the future, I can't change anything in the past, but now I can say I don't really like anything about the resistance. Now I could do a WUS analysis. I could look, where am I structurally positioned? And then it explains why I have resistance. If I am a creative person and I need to use Excel lists in my everyday work, then I have an automatic resistance, because it doesn't match my personality. That's how easy it can be. It's also not a one-size-fits-all solution. But recognizing my own character means I have a look at resistance from a completely different perspective. And that's actually a pretty cool thing.
Would you like to tell us how that works? The methodology.
Yes, exactly. It's actually really easy. Of course, for me it's normal. It's actually really easy. You need a smartphone for this. So a technical device where I can download an app. And then I go to a website called WUS, but not written like voice, but WOOYCE. So that's a made-up word. So wooyce.com, WOOYCE. I'll go there. And then I get a link to this app, so to speak. And then I can download it for free and determine my bass tone for free. And what I also get for free is 20 heroic traits to take a look. Does it suit me too? Because I want to check it out. For most people it is rather unlikely that you have ever heard that you can recognize yourself in the voice.
Did you just say heroic traits?
Exactly, I get the first 20 heroic traits displayed in the app.
For example,
Like being a social guy, being a creative guy. But those are really, really solid qualities. For example, whether I have leadership qualities. All such things. I really have 20 characteristics. Of course, that goes on. You can do a 40-page analysis, but it costs money, you can buy it.
that's legitimate. I'm learning about myself.
Exactly, but I get the first 20 traits for free. Then I can have a look, does it fit? And I can already promise that anyone who downloads the app, who is not upset but in the mood, will experience quite a flash. Because it is actually incredibly awesome to recognize yourself in these terms.
We've already discussed the subject of upset in a bit more detail. I simply recommend watching this interview. It was really exciting with you because it's probably all the more important to deal with it when I'm upset. Exactly, then I'm constantly in resistance. Wonderful. From your point of view, that would also be the case if I now have the feeling that I am someone who has so many rejections against myself. Would that be a good measure to get out of this?
Absolutely. Mainly because I don't have to work on the conscious level, but I can just sound my tone. And the fascinating thing about it is, these 21 runs, where I sound this form, I always have a short break in which I don't breathe and ideally don't think. And that's where I dock into the moment. There I am connected with the pure consciousness. And that's exactly where I can drive a reset. That means I reset my system without even having to think about blockages. I don't have to be angry with anyone at all. I just sit there 10 minutes and sound. And come back to me. That means when I'm stuck in such blockages, it's like I'm fainting. I have no more power because the outside is to blame for everything. I am controlled by the outside. And because of this sound, it's really very simple. You don't have to be able to sing either.
That was just my question.
Really, anyone can do that. I'm not a musical person either. I can do that too, making sounds. It's just a sequence that I do. And you also have a file, so I sound along. I listen to it and join in.
A file?
On my cell phone. I play that back and sound. So totally simple. Really, really simple. And then for 10 minutes, 21 times I am with me and in the now. And suddenly it's quiet. Suddenly resistance goes away and suddenly I no longer have to think about whether I'm in the resistance, I'm out.
That's the benefit of our minds, isn't it? Is it correct if it has to do something, if it has to sound and so on and so forth, then it has to leave out the other things? You said you have to do it 21 times. I think there is wisdom. If you want to change or manifest something within yourself, you must repeat it at least 21 times. Only then is it integrated. Does it have to do with this?
Among other things. There are several other reasons, but this is actually one of the reasons.
Which other ones are there at 21?
These 21 times, it's a combination of 3. You can simply divide 21 by several numbers, I'll just say. And even in sacred geometry, 21 times is just a number where something happens. And that's why those 21 representatives are important. But it is deeply rooted in the Vedas. But I could talk about that for half an hour alone. Why 21 times?
Let's just do a new interview about it. Unfortunately, we've run out of time again. I hope we were able to communicate a bit about self-rejection and why it's just not healthy to reject yourself and why ultimately. It also has to do with why we as a society simply cannot find peace, both on a small and large scale, in the small family or in the town, in the country, whatever, we don't have to look far. Our message for today should be, or yours, to come into reconciliation with yourself, to come into peace. I hope we did that. And this bass tone is a great help to recognize yourself, your own bass tone, your own structure, or structure is wrong again, your own personality and simply a way out of this self-rejection, or self-judgment. Very nice. Thank you very much for the great input and I wish you a good bass tone. No, nonsense, there is no such thing as a good bass tone. Certainly any bass tone is as good as it is.
A good mood.
A good mood, exactly. With this in mind, stay loyal to us and tune in again next time. I look forward to seeing you next time. And now stay healthy and above all stay at peace with yourself. And then we are automatically at peace with everything that comes our way. Thank you for watching.